am really excited to introduce to you our next speaker. I had the chance to talk with her for a few minutes tonight and meet her for the first time. Her name is Kelly Stauffer from Silence No More. And what you need to know about Kelly is that Kelly has a story. She's also a mom. She just got her master's degree from Johns Hopkins. She's expecting baby number 2 right now. Has a beautiful little girl, Michaela. But did I mention Kelly has a story? She also shares her testimony for God's purposes and for God's glory. So please welcome Kelly Stauffer of Silent No More.
I thank everyone for being here because we're as a country murdering millions and millions of babies, but we often forget that there's also another victim to every abortion. And so that's why I want to tell my story, because you know, when I was young, I wanted to be cool. Most kids want to be cool, and I guess growing up in the MTV generation, for some reason I thought being cool meant having sex. And so at the age of 13, I lost my virginity. 5 months later, I went to my pediatrician because my body was doing some pretty weird things, and I was like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And she said, well, you're pregnant. And I said, well, that can't be, because it was only that one time, and it was 5 months ago, so that can't be the problem. She said, well, you're 5 months pregnant. Oh. And my pediatrician was also close friends with my family, and so immediately she told my parents. And you know, we didn't know about the resources in the community, such as pregnancy centers, that could have guided us in the right direction. So we tried to seek answers from other places. So like I went to my church and I asked my youth pastor, you know, like, what does God say about this? And she said, well, you know, this church has decided that if you pray really hard about it and you come to the conclusion that God, you know, says that abortion is right for you, then that could be the case. You're only 13, right? So, you know, my pediatrician was also telling us that we should hurry up and make a decision, because the longer that we waited, the more risk there was to me as the mother with the abortion procedure. But also, fewer and fewer doctors are willing to perform the abortion the later that you wait. Now, abortion in Maryland is legal through all 9 months up until birth. So it wasn't that it was illegal in Maryland, but you know, my doctor had such little faith in any of the abortionists in this state that she recommended that my family go see Dr. George Tiller in Kansas. Today, I want everyone to be well aware that today that wouldn't have happened, because we have a new Tiller, Leroy Carhart, who's in Germantown, and he's performing the very same procedure that I'm about to tell you about. But he wasn't here then, so we went to go see Tiller in Kansas. And the procedure consisted of 5 days where you go to the clinic during the day and you stay in a hotel during the night. And over the naturally, when a woman goes into labor, she naturally dilates. Well, when you're forcing labor upon someone unnaturally, you force them to dilate. It doesn't feel good. So, you know, I was in a lot of pain for those 3 days, and they put us in a room with other women, and they called it counseling, but really it was just other women going through the same procedure at the same time. And one by one, they'd take us out into another room, and they'd, you know, do whatever they had to do. And so that happened for 3 or 4 days, and on the 4th day, they pulled me out into the room again, and I thought the same thing was going to happen that they had been doing for the last couple days, but somehow my baby knew that this was very different. I now knew that these movements that I felt was her moving around. Previously, I had thought that it was just gas. I don't know. I didn't know that it was the baby moving, but I was well aware of this vibrant life inside of me. And as I lay on that table, I knew that something was different about this time, because she was like kicking me, elbowing me, turning somersaults. And I don't know how she knew it, because the doctor entered with a long needle that he stuck into my abdomen, and almost immediately I never felt her move again. That which I knew was perfectly formed with 10 fingers and 10 toes. I saw the sonogram. I knew there was nothing wrong with this life inside of me, but she stopped moving. So then, you know, I had to go back to the hotel room that night knowing full well what I had done, and that it was wrong, and that I was carrying her around. The next day, they put us in a room with like 10 hospital beds and a nurses center a nurses station in the center. And you know, the pro-choice community wants you to believe that they're there for women and they're there to comfort women and take care of women. I did not feel that one single bit. And maybe it's because they put an IV in that's meant to put you in a twilight state of consciousness where you're groggy and you're not really, you know, aware of what's going on. You're not supposed to remember anything, but I remember everything. But you can still move around and follow directions. So maybe that's why they didn't think to come to my bedside and say, you know, everything's gonna be okay, comfort me, hold my hand, anything, nothing. I was there alone, in a room full of people, completely alone, going through the most horrible time of my life. And, you know, they would like talk to each other and be like, look, she's cold, and like throw a blanket on me.
We need a doctor.
Oh my gosh.
Doctor. Andy Harris.
It's okay, we're good.
We're good. Thank you for your help.
Dear God, please be with the situation that's occurring, and please rise up someone to complete your will here today. So I don't remember.
They had thrown the blanket.
Cold
and they were
blanket
cold
on
and
it.
indifferent.
And one by one, the nurse would go down the line of these beds and shove her hand up under a blanket, see if you're dilated enough. And if you were, you got wheeled off in a wheelchair to another room. There's children here tonight. So I have to stop the description of what's going on. It's already been kind of graphic, right? But just know that what we do to young babies in the womb that are completely viable is too graphic to mention before your children. And we allow it to happen every day. There's no dignity to what I did to my child. So I left there feeling horrible. I hated myself, I hated my parents, I hated the world, and I knew that God hated me and couldn't forgive me. How could he forgive me? So I stopped going to church. I used lots of drugs to try and numb the pain. I made a lot of dumb decisions, and my parents realized that I was making a lot of dumb decisions, and so they put me in therapy, and I saw doctor after doctor, and they'd say, you're major depressive, you're bipolar, you're this or that. They'd put me on medication after medication, and nothing would work. I still didn't want to live. There was nothing worth living for. And finally, I found a therapist that I really liked, and I was like, well, what do you think is my problem? And she said, well, I think you have post-traumatic stress disorder from the abortion. I said, oh, that can't be, because that was 10 years ago. I'm really over that. She said, okay, well, and she gave me a pamphlet for a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. And she said, I've paid for it. You're going. I'm not taking no for an answer. So after her gentle persuasion, I was like, all right. And I went, and I'm really glad that I did, because my entire life changed. I saw other women who had been through the same thing, just different details, and I didn't condemn them. And I realized I needed to stop condemning myself. And I read scripture about the amazing power of God's forgiveness. And when I brought down that wall that I had put up between me and him, I was drenched in that forgiveness. Completely drenched. And I left that place no longer wanting to use drugs, no longer hating life, but wanting to live and tell my story and tell my baby's story so that other women wouldn't go through the same hurt that I went through. I started going to church again. I met my husband at church, and you would think that we, galloped off into the sunset and it was a happy ending. But that's not true, because grief doesn't work like that. I still have hard times. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and every step of that pregnancy and every step of this pregnancy that I'm in right now, it's a wonderful, miraculous time, but it's joined with this feeling of grief because I've been here before, but I don't have that baby. And so I just appreciate what everyone is doing here, and I just hope that everyone takes this message and doesn't only use it here. Go out into the world and be bold with preaching that God cares about life.